welcome to Open Source episode 38. And as usual, I've got the lovely gentlemen of Mark Simpson and Rory Unsworth. Give us a wave and a kiss. So today we're going to go back to the usual format of discussing what we found interesting in the news and what made us wonder. So Mark, do you want to kick it off and tell us what is it in news that you found interesting this week?
So it's around space, and I think Suraya will like this. So we had the episode about space before. So it was an announcement today about JPMorgan has been exploring IoT payments in a decentralized way via blockchain, which is great. But they tested it between satellites orbiting Earth. So that was the reason. And what they did, JPMorgan, we know they got a ton of money, but they didn't send their own satellites up into space. But they worked with the Danish satellite company GOM Space, and they allow third parties to run software on their satellites. So it's I guess it's another form of SaaS, satellites as a service. So they ran through that. And what they were why did they do this? Well, they want to experiment to see, can digital devices use blockchain for transactions? So it's the whole Internet of Things piece, and they're looking to the future really. So where IoT devices will connect to one another, a lot of it's around consumer electronics at the moment. So for example, your Amazon Echo, Google Home will speak to each other. They might then, for whatever reason, send a payment to your Sonos to trade things. But these smart devices will start doing transactions together. You pull the last pint of milk out of the fridge and the fridge will order some more milk for you, maybe something like that. So again, the CEO of JPMorgan's blockchain business, Onyx, was talking about that. And his theory was, listen, it's about decentralized is what we're trying to test. So let's do space because it's the most decentralized space that we can think of, if you excuse the pun. So I just think if you're gonna dream big and try things big, that's great. So I love that from JPMorgan.
It adds a whole new meaning to the notion of a rocket payload, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
But the Danes could have gone a little bit step further. I'm suddenly thinking, imagine that satellite. You've got a small camera and you've got a small digital interface that opens up, and people can pay a service that says, just show those texts, will you marry me? It takes a picture, a little video, and it's a message sent from space. You imagine the amount of people who would pay. Imagine it's just $10 or $50 a message. You take a picture of it from space, of that message. I think that would work immensely well. Next startup.
Very cheesy, Waleed. Very cheesy, but I like it. You're about to put Hallmark out of business.
Yeah, that's right. Don't bother renting a star anymore or buying a star. That's it. You can do that, or some new form of Nifty in space. That would be really cool. Yeah,
indeed. Rory.
The stars will realign. My go, right?
There you go.
I like that one. My like this week is a declaratory judgment from the UK Supreme Court that most lawyers will hate. And I actually mentioned it before, but there's a new angle to it that occurred to me recently. And it's a real cat amongst the pigeons judgment that points to the advantage of something that lawyers don't necessarily like, which is standardization. They think that you should use the formula of words that suits the particular context. It's all contextual, it's all verbal. And I'm here not talking about complete standardization, but at least within a company and as far as possible, right? So a tendency to standardization, not the ultimate direction. Anyway, the case is one that we've talked about because it came out in January, but it's really still a hot topic. And it concerns coverage of operating losses when there's no physical damage. So in COVID times, there may be no physical damage, right? Mm-hmm. But you've still got business interruption. Material damage is generally perceived as the trigger for most property covers or material damage covers, so engineering covers too. But the fact that you have to lock down staff so you can't operate means that your business is interrupted. And is that covered or not? And the UK regulator was very clever about this, took a sample of wordings to the Supreme Court to look at the question. And the answer, guess what, is the lawyer's answer. It depends entirely on the wordings. So some insurers were praying that to the gods of tradition that the court would somehow honor that mantra that they have of, no no business interruption without material damage. They would honor that as sacrosanct. The court disagreed, and it wouldn't even say, that's correct unless the clause says otherwise. It just said it depends entirely on the wording. And that means, in our context of digital tech, that means that insurers must be really aware of the kinds of wordings they have out there and start to organize them where they're not, where they're inconsistent. They need to start organizing them, understanding them as a mass, because when an event like this comes, they will be judged on in their individual merits, and some will be comparable, some won't be, but you ought to do that assessment using technology beforehand. So, this is basically freedom of contract that supports my argument that insurers should be doing a digital contract optimization to get better control of their wordings. Be aware of the impact of the sum of your wordings before disaster strikes, because then you're on the back foot. So that's my light this week, the way the court dealt with that topic, and the impact that it suggests to support my argument for digital contract optimization.
And we're really starting to see more and more factors impacting this now, aren't we? So we're seeing judgments, we're seeing regulators prepared to go out and test this. We're seeing technology enabling it. And like you said, there's this chunk of work in the middle that says you really got to optimize this and standardize it. And why shouldn't we? Particularly in an industry that is low on trust and is low on efficiency. So maybe we're going to get to that tipping point where we finally get to it.
Yeah, we're a bit like a hospital that's always treating every case as if it's ER,
Yeah.
And that we can't in any way prepare. Every transaction comes in, we look at it individually, off we go, we panic a bit, it gets done, and then we move on, we never learn. Actually, proactively and outside of the renewal periods, people should be looking at those as a whole, organizing them, saying, this means this, if this happens, then this scenario. Look at it beforehand, Technology is out there to help.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that, Rory. Mark, we're back to earth now. Do you want to tell us?
Yeah, so it's about books. So it was some stuff I was reading about storytelling this week, and in particular the importance of storytelling in your startup. And it's a thing I've observed, having seen quite a few pitches and pitch decks from people, and there can be a lot of focus on the why, and almost, to use Elvin Turner's 3 whys: why this, why now, why us, which are really helpful. But I think with startups where there's so many things to do with so much pressure, there isn't enough onus on the storytelling and the reason for that. And as humans, we're hardwired to listen and to tell stories. And almost, are we missing this as we're trying to compress things, and we still try and stand out in the crowd with things like, the unique selling points. But I think we miss the art of the story and the ability to emote and connect with people. And there are, frameworks around that. And we live in a climate at the moment where it will be, the great time for stories in the future as we come back and recall what it was. For me, the time we'll never forget, but I can't remember a thing about what I did. But also when I'm thinking about, when I describe what I'm doing and what I'm doing with my new startup with my partner, why we're doing it, and what the income, what the effects are going to be. So we're describing, the plot, the drama, where things are, the context about why it's there, the people that are involved, the point of view, the pace, the dialogue, that tell a coherent story, but not just logically, they're emotionally, it makes sense. So that's my real wondering this week about doing more on storytelling.
Completely agree.
We've had it before, haven't we? And I think, every time we mention it, it emphasizes to me that it's such an important part of the entrepreneur's art, isn't it?
Yeah,
Completely.
It might be one we want to explore in more detail on an episode, and maybe we'll get a storyteller in with us.
I think that would be fascinating, because like when I talk about Rebalance Earth, I talk about what we're doing, but I love talking about the journey that's got us there. The story, how the 3 co-founders got connected, how they decided to embark on a journey, and suddenly 60 people from around the world and another 100 now or wanting to be part of that story. And I think there's an element where it makes a lot of sense for startups that stories are contagious, right? They can go viral in their own. And that is a critical element for a startup because you don't have the marketing budgets and you want to create, this viral coefficient, that is so often talked about. But storytelling is one of the greatest ways for that to happen.
And it persists. And what's really interesting, because I remember you telling me the story about the first when you first met with your co-founders.
Yeah.
And the first thing I felt was the emotion of it. So it felt here, so it resonated with me again, and I could recall how I felt watching you light up and seeing how passionate you felt about it. So that works. And again, I think it will be interesting in Gabon, where you're going to trial this. There are some tremendous storytellers, and things persist through stories as well.
Exactly.
It comes and goes.
Yeah. No, it'd be quite fun actually to do an open source on that. Rory, do you want to tell us what is it in news that made you wonder this week?
Well, yeah, I've got to wander around what we should call something, and I want to brainstorm live with you guys right now to find a name for a phenomenon that I've come across a number of times, but I've never kind of labeled, right? And I need you guys, you've encountered this before too, and I wonder whether you found a name for it, or whether a name already exists, right? Okay, let me describe the scenario, then we can think of the name. So I'm helping an insurance company create a clause library, right, in order to automate part of their legal processes. And their legal department has taken on the role of the challenger, right? And the other day in a meeting, they said we shouldn't start creating the library of clauses until we've trained every underwriter to be consistent in the way they assess the clauses, because otherwise you can end up with multiple inconsistent views on clauses, okay? Now, I asked what seemed to me the natural question, which is, okay, how is that done now? How in the ordinary underwriting process do you ensure that there's this consistency, right? Do you legal look at it every time to check, you sign thousands of policies every year, presumably there's already something, right, in place. And they said no, because no one has time.
What?
So basically, they wanted this digital project to solve everything in one go, or they wouldn't support it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So what would be the name for that? Of some parties to come up with reasons not to do digital projects because it won't necessarily solve every single problem immediately. We've got to find a name.
The Three Musketeers. One for all and all for one.
Nice start. Yeah. I mean, it's a form of change-resistant behavior in some way. We talked about change management a couple of weeks ago, but it's occurred so often in my thinking, that in my experience in these change projects, that an expert department says, well, if you don't solve this problem that's been there for ages and ages, we won't allow you to solve a whole bunch of other problems. Anyway,
I think Mark is writing some notes. I'm curious what he's going to write up. But before I forget, you, the audience who's listening, feel free to add your suggestions in the comments below to help us answer Rory's challenge.
Good.
Yeah. I think it's perfection, expectation, paralysis. So
nice. This is going well. This is a very good.
But you're absolutely right. It's a great mechanism for resisting the move to change. So if I raise the bar so high and I'm deleting and distorting the fact that it's very imperfect today, but that doesn't matter, Rory. We're looking to the future. So if we've got this one chance to do this or change this, or if we're going to expend all this effort, or if this needs to stand out in the sea of all the other things we do, it has to fix everything. And you're right, your question about how do we do it today? Well, we don't have time. And again, that's another one of those great distortions. No, we choose not to make time. We choose not to prioritize it. And what they're saying is, so we are now prioritizing this. Okay, great. So let's go from Monday then, that we've got to train all the lawyers in the existing pieces. And when we've done that and we've run them through that muscle, we'll then bring the new stuff in because it will be easy then, won't it? Oh, no, we can't do that. Oh, okay, interesting. Selective prioritization.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Mark. Yeah, and I'd be interested to hear what everyone else has to say about it.
Excellent. Well, you heard it from the man himself. Feel free to add your comments below and with your suggestions. But on this note, I'm going to thank you both very much for your contributions. And we'll be seeing you guys next week. We got a very exciting open source episode coming. If you want to participate in any of our upcoming ones or want us to talk about a certain topic, please feel free to reach out to us. For now, wishing you all a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and we'll be seeing you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.